what you're basically telling me right now is that God apparently cared more about whatever happened to you that day than, preventing the school shooting.
No, I'm not telling you that.
No, I'm saying that this is what it logically entails here is that God
I would say
apparently
that based on a certain.
Hold on, I'm not done talking. God damn it. What's up, heathens? How y'all doing? I'm the Godless Engineer, and I critically analyze apologist claims to give you the best arguments and information so that you can stand up and use your voice. Today, we're taking a look at a clip from The Line. If you would like to, please go down below to the description and find a link to The Line and to the live stream that this video clip is coming from. If you enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing to The Line. I host over on The Line at least twice a month, so I hope to see you over there. All right, let's get on into the clip. If you're ready to fuck around and find out what this crazy ass caller's talking about today, then please stay tuned.
Draper's calling from Pennsylvania. Pronouns are him. Draper, you're on with John as I take a breath.
Hello.
And enter into Zen mode. How you doing, Draper?
Hey, how's it going, buddy? So I'm calling to answer the question for how to find God or whatever. Is that right? Is that what this is about?
Sure. Yeah. Sounds like a good place to start. How do you or why do you believe in God, or how do you know God, or any of that?
So, I mean, I don't know, some odd years ago, I ran into this guy going through some problems in life. You know what I mean? Decided to give it a whirl, right? Not the God thing, but just the supposed support group or whatever. And basically, he just introduced this idea to me. It was to explain it, it doesn't sound right on its face. You know what I mean? It's like, it says you have to quit playing God. You can't find God if you think you are God. And it was like, well, I mean, that's obviously I don't think I'm God. That's the stupidest thing I ever heard anybody say. And then he went on to elaborate further. It's like oh, go ahead. You have a question?
Oh, well, I was just saying, yeah, right. I think it's a stupid thing to say that we're God, but you have a lot of apologists and theists out there that like to claim that atheists consider themselves God or something like that. So that's really
it's sort of a sorry. I didn't. I'm sorry, man. Yeah, it's sort of a play on words. It's almost not meant to be, at least in his view, wasn't meant to be interpreted literally. But basically, it was that underneath we have these scripts running in our heads that suggest we know how the world should be. Like, I think that old ladies shouldn't buy lottery tickets at 8:00 in the morning, or I think that gas should only cost this much. I think that people should get married and stay married. I think that we can go on and on and on with all these things of how I think it should be. Don't know where I came up with that. Don't know why I think that. Somewhere along the way, someone whispered in my ear, "Hey, Draper, why don't you decide how the whole world should be? Because you're a smart guy, and you could probably figure all that out." And what it does is it sets the stage for my suffering, for all of my emotional pain. So basically, by having these scripts running in my head. Oh, go ahead.
Can you connect something for me? How does having, I guess a shitty position on when people should be allowed to buy a lottery ticket, how does that set you up for suffering? I'm just kind of curious. Like, I don't know how that.
Yeah, sure. And that's a great question. So basically, it's like an expectation. You know what I mean? Like, I think that this is happening the wrong way. And because I think it's wrong, then I think I know what's right. And then it causes disappointment, frustration. And anytime anybody's ever has an emotional problem, basically you can trace it back to some way they think it should be. Like, you can ask anybody in any situation where they're going through something, ask them, well, how should it be? And they'll be able to answer that question for the most part.
Sometimes.
So
how do you know? How do you know which one's right?
Oh, God.
I'm trying to figure out how you know which. Like, people have two different opinions on when it's okay to buy lottery. Let's say they have three different opinions on when it's okay to buy lottery tickets. How do you tell which of those is right? And what does any of this have to do with finding God?
Well, yeah. So, I mean, how do I know which one is right? Well, it doesn't matter. Like, basically, if I think it's wrong, and maybe there's 100 right answers, but if there's even one, and that one is currently happening in my current exposures, then I'm going to get upset. I'll notice that.
I didn't ask anything at all about the upset. I understood that. I said it immediately. I'm asking, how do we tell which position, if any, is in fact correct, because you can be disappointed that the world doesn't match what you would like it to be, and be completely correct and justified in that position.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, that's yeah. Well, I'm getting to that, but basically, if you want me to just answer real quick, you can't. It's impossible. Like I don't have the processing power in my brain to calculate what's right or what's wrong or what's good or what's bad. You know what I mean? No human.
I don't understand, because I find it in some cases absolutely trivial. Like, I'm going to say that in 99.9999999999999% of cases, it would be wrong to sexually assault a child. Wouldn't you agree with that?
Okay, and you're leaving some room there, though, right? There's no point.
I'm just I'm just saying, I don't believe that anything is subject to absolute certainty, and so that's why I put it as.
Then I would say you're not playing God. Good job. You're not playing God then. If you're leaving, that's the idea. I'm going to go to the store and I'm going to get a pack of cigarettes. And that's absolutely certain. I put my shoes on, I go out the door. There's a million things that could happen that could get in my way. And if something does, then I might get upset. It sets the stage for me to get upset. But if I say, I'm going to...
You're not listening. God. You're not listening at all. I understand that disagreement, discontinuity between what you would like to happen, what you expect to happen, and what will happen is problematic. My question had absolutely nothing at all to do with that. It had to do with, how do you figure out what the right answer is? And if you don't have any access to the right answer, how do you know you're not already right?
Well, I mean, at first, when you're doing this, we tell people to just stop managing their lives. You don't know. You have no idea. Unfortunately, your ideas are all kind of screwy. So then later on,
how do you know that that's the case?
So
you cannot tell people you're wrong by default, because that's not in any way a justified position.
Well, no. If a person if a person doesn't like the way they feel, they're literally not serving their own objective in life. So they're wrong. They're wrong by default.
You're missing the point here, Draper. I'm not at all asking about, nor am I concerned about whether or not people like reality. I'm talking about what reality is. You cannot say you're wrong about
reality. Is whatever it is. Reality just is.
Congratulations for an absolutely useless tautology, Draper. Do you give a shit whether your beliefs are true or whether they feel good? Which is more important?
Well, obviously true. I mean, who would who would
Draper, I'm going to mute you. No. You just laughed at the suggestion that people might prefer comfort over truth, when your entire case that you're making is about asserting or avoiding asserting what is true, based entirely on preferences. Your preferences don't match reality. This makes you sad. So you got to give up this notion that you have the right position. That's not how this works. It's entirely possible that someone has a correct position that they cannot demonstrate. And it's also entirely possible that position could be wrong. And if you can't tell which is right or wrong, I'm still trying to figure out what any of this has to do with a God. But there are people out there, and we speak to them frequently, who absolutely care more about whether an idea is comforting than whether it's true. But if you genuinely care about whether it's true, you have to provide a mechanism, a method by which you and we can verify that your true claim is true. Sorry, John, go ahead.
Well, I was going to pretty much point out what you just did. The entire setup here, Draper, is basically you not providing any kind of justification for any position that you have. In fact, you're making the argument that there are no good justifications for having in any one particular position. It's just simply because, that's what you think. And I was going to initially ask, like, do you just go around and form like gut opinions about how things should be, or do you have reasonable justifications for the things that you think? Because it kind of seems to me like you just sort of think things and you just sort of fly by your seat of your pants, or at least you used to.
I mean, no, I would say Okay, so there's a lot there. So, I mean, what does this have to do with God? I'm going to answer Matt's question, because it supposedly there's a God and he's in control of everything. So if you quit thinking you know how it should be, you stop matching wits with the Almighty, and you stop finding yourself in conflict with reality. You find, the Taoists would say, you end up in step with the Tao, and you're more at peace with the world.
Draper.
Yeah. Sure.
You're aware that not all God concepts fit that model. So you've picked out, of all the possible God concepts, you are focused on supposedly there's a God that's in control of everything. That isn't the only possible God concept. And so now you are judging everything in reality based on a God concept that might not match reality.
Well, I'm not actually really judging anything, but I would argue that every religion is actually trying to arrive at that God's in charge. I don't know, except for maybe Buddhism. Which
don't Draper, please. I never mentioned the word religion. I didn't ask you about religion. Nobody gives a fuck about religion. Religions can form that are entirely free of gods. Religions can have different views on God. And while most of the major religions do adhere to notions about a God that is ostensibly the creator and potentially the controller of all of it, that's not the sum total of God. And so when you decide you're only going to address this category of God, you've already poisoned the well.
I mean, would you want me to give someone else's conception of God? I don't. How would I express this in any other way than the conception that I have?
So I don't have a God. I don't accept a God concept. I'm able to consider whatever God concepts are presented. I'm not just a Baptist atheist or a Catholic atheist. I'm an atheist. I'm unconvinced of any gods that have been presented to me at all. And so when you come in and say, ooh, do you think it'd be silly for someone to call in and say, God is that which is and controls everything, and he's the one that makes poop turn red and fly up into the sky at night, and that's the only God concept that I'm willing to talk about? Wouldn't that be stupid?
Yeah, sure. That's cool. Not. So is that what you're saying that I'm doing?
Yes, it is. It is, because we're still trying to get to, how does your Taoist or whatever view of you have conflict between your expectations and reality? I get that. Everybody has conflict between their expectations and reality. One of the key things of skepticism is to train your brain so that your internal model of reality is as accurate as possible. And because of that, it's based on good standards of evidence. It's based on critical thinking. It's based on empirical evidence for things whenever possible. And so you're just saying somebody told you, set aside the whole stop being God thing, because it's silly. I have expectations about reality. My expectations about reality are consistently not coming true. Am I wrong to have those expectations? Or are my expectations? So I'm not wrong to have those expectations. So the conflict here is not that I have those expectations, it's that there's a disagreement. But what does that have to do with whether or not there's a God?
Okay. If it is true that right and wrong only exists in the mind of the people who perceive it, then it is not objectively true. So if we're trying to figure out
Draper,
you asked me a question, I'm answering it, bud.
No,
I'm giving you the answer.
You're not answering it. No, you're not answering it. I'm trying to save you time. Listen, I didn't ask you about morality. I didn't say anything at all about objective morality. I'm someone whose view of morality is one that it is situational and that there is no absolute foundation of reality. So you're talking about something that is an absolute misrepresentation of my view and does not get to the justification for your view. We're starting with there's a disagreement between what you expect and what there is. And somehow this led you to some belief about a God existing. I want to understand that. But if you're just going to be like, you in your response began with an assumption and a foundation to compare that assumption to, both of which I reject. And that's why it's not going to get us anywhere. That's why I needed to interrupt, because I'm not advocating for moral truth. I'm trying to figure out why you're convinced that there's a God.
I'm trying. Well, Okay, because as I practiced that, I started to have strange experiences. As I started doing that, there was some weird...
Draper, what's happening in your head right now does not match the actual discussion. Because you just said, in response to me saying, I'm trying to figure out how you got from this disagreement to therefore there's a God. You just started by saying, as I practiced that. Practiced what? What the fuck are you even talking about with practiced that? It's like your brain jumped from the question I asked to the question you wish you had been asked. Please, all I want to know is if we agree that our internal model of reality doesn't match reality, what about that leads you to conclude that there's a God? That's the question.
Well, there's some steps along the way, Matt. That doesn't lead to that there's a God. That in and of itself doesn't lead to there's a God. It eventually does, but there's some steps along the way.
So it eventually
does. Have to fill in some blanks here.
Draper, then I'm asking you to give us those fucking steps. Don't give me the narrative that there's steps. Just tell me the fucking steps.
Okay. Are you going to let me finish, or are you just going to keep interrupting me every time?
No, I'm not going to let you finish. I'm going to mute you again right now. And you knew I was going to do this if you've watched the show before, just like everybody else knew I was going to do it. Please, please, please don't whine about the fact you got to put on mute for claiming you were going to do something that you've repeatedly fucking avoided doing. You're the problem here, not us. We are here asking questions which you keep avoiding. So yes, I will mute you. And yes, I'll put you on hold. And then we'll bring you back in to try again. I'm going to unmute you in just a couple of seconds. When I do, I would like you to explain how you get from there's a conflict between people's expectations and the facts about and the apparent facts about reality. This leads to God via this path. I don't want you to whine about getting put on hold. I don't want you to dissemble. I don't want you to distract. I don't want you to sound more like a troll caller. I genuinely would like to understand this. I don't need your fucking narrative about how you think you've been treated or anything else. There are 5 other people on hold right now. Maybe they're sitting there going, would this guy just answer the fucking question? I'd like to not be on hold for an hour while he spins in fucking circles. So I'm going to take you off mute. Please explain to us how the fact that there is conflict, disagreement between people's expectations of reality and the apparent facts about reality eventually leads to a God.
Hello?
Hey there, Draper. You want to answer the question?
Yeah. When people practice the idea where they stop imposing their expectations on the world, they start to have experiences that are inexplicable, that are very strange and bizarre. The frequency of them in magnitude, people try to come up with an explanation for that. I've actually heard callers call into your show that say this, and you guys, when you try to explain it, you go into about coincidences and how they happen and this, that, and the other. But but until you've experienced these things, you can't really. Of course, we would chalk it up to that because that's what I did before it happened to me.
Okay.
As that goes on,
Draper,
we start to ascribe different meaning to that.
Draper.
So it's the Mothman from the Mothman prophecies. Great. Oh yeah, sure. Go ahead.
What are we doing right now? Sorry. Okay. I was trying to stop you, but it was like a freight train. So Draper, now. What experience you started going into the Mothman thing? I don't want to get off in the weeds in that. That feels like a red herring, maybe. But I'm wondering, can you describe some kind of experience that you've had that has directly contributed to your belief in God?
Well, it's a collection of experiences, but if you want me to, it's kind of a long story, man.
I don't need I need the cliff notes because we don't have 3 days
forever,
to discuss it.
No, I understand. Yeah, it's hard to get all into that. I mean, an example would be
answer the question.
I'm sorry, you broke up there. What was that?
I said it'd be quicker if you'd try to fucking answer the question.
Okay. So I'm walking with my daughter. We're walking down the street. We're going to a bookstore. It's on a Sunday. It's Father's Day. Okay. This is 2012. As we're walking down the street, we get to the bookstore. It's a Barnes & Noble. And on the square in the town that I live in, and the opening to the store, like the front doors are sunken in from the face of the building, right? Probably 6 feet or so. And so we walk in, and it's Sunday. It's about 8 o'clock, so it's closed. It's a really hot day, no wind or nothing like that. I basically said, "Okay, it's closed, Aubrey. Let's go back this way." So we go walking down the street, and as I walk out of the opening in the building, the wind suddenly starts blowing really, really hard. And it just bends the trees down to the ground and pushes me back a step. And I just kind of dip out of the road to get out of the wind because it was, blowing really hard. And it was really like, what the hell? Yeah, it was kind of weird. You know what I mean? So I turn to her and I say, check the door. And then she opens the door. And then we walk into Barnes and Noble's when it's closed, and we're walking around the store. She's running around grabbing books and stuff, picking out stuff. I'm like not buying them all of it, but it's keeping her busy.
I got a good.
Well, this goes.
Sorry,
there's
Draper.
more. If you let me to finish here, Chief.
No.
Well, no. Okay, so first of all, anecdotal stories are never going to be convincing to like a skeptic.
I never said they were. Never said. I agree with you. Yeah.
Well, good for you.
Okay. Yeah, good. So first of all, I get that you have like a collection of experiences here, and I get that it's an entire Stephen King novel about it. But see, the thing is that I find that every time somebody says, "Oh, I had these personal experiences that can only be explained by God," and in these cases, and it always comes across as very narcissistic and very like, oh, the world, it's very personal and the world kind of revolves around me, because what you're telling me here, whatever ends up happening in your story here, I'm not exactly sure what happened in the Barnes and Noble and the town square, but what you're basically telling me right now is that God apparently cared more about whatever happened to you that day than, preventing the school shooting.
No, I'm not telling you that.
No, I'm saying that this is what it logically entails here, is that God apparently couldn't. Hold on, I'm not done talking. God damn it. But every time these like experiences and everything like that, it logically entails that God apparently cared more about doing whatever he wanted to do for you than it was for, him to stop some child dying of bone cancer, or like the most recent shooting at a Catholic school, or any of the school shootings out there. God apparently cared more about farting in your direction and blowing you back towards Barnes and Noble than he did about, preventing Susie from dying that day of bone cancer. And so like, that's why all these anecdotal stories, and I tried to let you go on a little bit there to tell it, all these anecdotal stories, they always come across as narcissistic to me, and thinking that for whatever reason, God favored you that day, and that was at the cost of so many different thousands of lives.
I have one quick question, and then I'll let him address this however he wants. Is the fact that it was at a Barnes and Noble relevant to the conclusion that you reached at all?
No, could have just said bookstore. Yeah.
No. Does the fact that it was a bookstore matter?
Yes. No, it does. Yeah. Yeah. That matters. Why? If I got to the rest of the story. Well, because there was an event.
Why does it? Jesus Christ.
Hello? So Draper, yeah, we're here.
Yeah.
Is there any way that you can kind of like, since it seems to matter, like the end, like whatever event, can you like wrap that up in like maybe 2 to 3 sentences, or does it take like?
I could try. Yeah. Okay. So there was an event there. Because of the event, I ended up being. It was a grad school program event to get into master's degree, and because I was there. And it was something I was interested in. I ended up going and talking to the director. And to summarize, I got into grad school without ever having an associate's, bachelor's. I didn't even have my high school diploma, which everyone said was pretty much impossible. But I have like hundreds of these stories too. So you know what I mean?
Hundreds of stories of you having an extraordinary
hundreds
happen. I still don't understand why was the bookstore relevant?
Well, that's because it was the writing program was at the bookstore. It was like If I told the whole story in its context, it becomes relevant.
No. Saying that there was something that happened at the bookstore is not fucking relevant at all. It happened somewhere, right?
I guess. Yeah, I could leave that detail out.
So when I asked you if it mattered if it was Barnes and Nobles, and you said no, and then I asked if it mattered if it was a bookstore, and you said yes, you should have said no then too, right?
No, I disagree. I mean, you're basing it on the summary of my story. That's summarized.
Please,
yeah, sure.
I'm sorry.
The summarized version, you're right.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Please explain how the bookstore, could this have happened anywhere other than a bookstore?
No.
Only bookstores could have events like this where you could actually get accepted into a grad program without a high school diploma. Only bookstores have that, right?
I think so. Yeah, I can't really say. So? I haven't traveled the world and gone to.
Maybe that's why you don't have a high school diploma, and why I don't believe you got into grad school without one.
Draper, if I can
believe me, man, you know what I mean.
Right, that's fine.
Call then.
I thought that it was a genuine question on the title of the show. Like, how did you? What was your way? Yeah. How could we find your God?
No,
I thought that was a genuine question. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't realize it wasn't.
I'm sorry that your answer is not genuine. That's the thing here, is that when I ask you questions that try to get to the problems in your flawed epistemology and the fact that your story in the one example that you gave is patently absurd,
Right.
You ignore the flawed epistemology and be like, well, that's just a summary. Oh, yes, it matters it's a Barnes Noble. Well, no, it doesn't, but it matters it's a bookstore, because a bookstore is the only place where an event. No, that's where the event was supposedly happening, but they could have had that event at a coffee shop, right?
No, I mean, not in my area. You're not going to fit that many people in any coffee shops around here.
Okay.
I don't, maybe somewhere else there is. I don't know.
Draper. Why does it fucking matter how many people were there?
I don't know. I'm going to ask you that. Why are you on?
You're not going to ask me any fucking questions for the rest of my life. I just got you back to another problem with your epistemology. And your response was, yeah, it needed to happen in a bookstore, because not in my area, because in my area, you couldn't fit that many people into a coffee shop. And then I said, why does it matter how many people were there? And you proved that you're a dishonest liar, wasting our time. Goodbye. I've done this for a little while. For the people who are like, why does Matt get so mad? That's why.
Yeah.
Guy calls in to tell some bullshit.
Yeah, and I really feel like his conclusion there, like I knew that whatever happened at the bookstore, it wasn't gonna affect, like, the point that I made was that it seems incredibly narcissistic for, like, God to, like, point him in the direction of getting into a grad school, whereas, like, because I feel like it entails, one of two things: either God can't stop the child with cancer from dying, or he chooses to allow the child to die from cancer, or one of those two. So basically, his graduate degree was way more important than, like, real life or death situations, and I just find that to be incredibly narcissistic. Yeah,
the thing is, it could be narcissistic, or even appear narcissistic, and still be a pathway of, oh, this happened, this happened, this happened. And it may be, well, that's narcissistic, and you think that God thinks you're special. And maybe he does think that God thinks he's special. Maybe God does think he's special. The fact that somebody thinks God thinks they're special doesn't disprove a God. But we're not here to disprove God. We're here to say, why do you believe this? And the answer is, oh, I was my friend or myself were falling on some rough times, and somebody told me that if you want to find God, you got to stop acting like God. And that was an epiphany, because we all have these expectations and they don't match reality. And because of that, I went exploring. And then as soon as you give up imposing your expectations on reality, obviously, all of a sudden you have hundreds of weird experiences. The point I wanted to get to was, we've all had weird experiences. Some of them are weirder than others. What's the justification for thinking that your weird experiences are sufficient to conclude that there's a God? But we can't get there because, Captain, I don't have a diploma, but got admitted to a graduate degree program, which I'm just going to flat out call bullshit on. Let's see the documentation. although I'm not convinced this person has any clue what documentation is. They go to, oh, here's a story. This should prove God. It should prove God to nobody. It shouldn't even prove that you are a rational, sane individual. I mean, if you're going to say this should be a demonstration that should convince people, oh, no, I didn't say that, Matt. I didn't say that this should convince you. Then why did you call? Oh, because you're asking the question. And what's the question on below the chat there? Does it say, can we know your God? And what's the question we repeatedly ask? What do you believe and why? What should we believe? Are we wrong? Is our epistemology? All of this is obvious. I'm sorry if it was your first time calling and you thought this was just, the book club social event where you called in to give your thoughts on how the universe works, but that's not what the show is. Well, I think that if you just set aside your expectations, okay, how do you form better expectations, caller? If all of us are stuck with expectations that don't match reality, how do we figure out what best to do? Because it seems like you realized your expectations weren't matching reality. And then what? There's still nothing there about leads to a God. You had a wonderful event where something completely extraordinary, which I don't believe happened, supposedly happened. Even if I granted the caller, you stopped thinking that you had a good understanding of reality. You opened your mind up to the possibility that you could be wrong. And you walked into an event at a bookstore, and it could only be a bookstore. Doesn't really matter that it was Barnes and Noble. And because of what was going on, somebody offered you admission to a graduate program, despite the fact that you don't even have a high school diploma. Cool. I hope your graduate degree is more useful than a theological degree. But your graduate degree as an attempt at theology is useless.
Well, heathens, that's going to be it for today's clip from the line. Again, if you would like to subscribe to the line, their links are in the description. So please go down there and subscribe. And as a reminder, I do host over there at least twice a month on either a Sunday or a Monday. So if you want to see more of me answering questions from callers, please go over to the line and subscribe. Don't forget to stand up and use your voice. Bye, heathens.